Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun. What is going on? What's coolin'? My name's G-Sling, and this is your fake news, not local, not from LA, stationary, fake weather report, coming to you live for the Los Angeles Chargers. Guess what is going to happen today? We get a little cloudy, we get a little action going, and there is a 100% chance of getting struck by some lightning today. So let's go ahead and dive into this roster, talk about what they need to do to get over the whoopsies, should I call it, the yips, right? Is if you're a golfer or anything like that. But they got to get better on both sides of the football. And we're going to go through that roster, get into a free agency strategy, and do a 7-round mock draft. So let's go ahead and talk about this roster. Funny enough, actually, when I was a kid growing up, I really wanted to be a weatherman. That's what's so funny about it. Now I think, oh my goodness, that would be wild to see me as a weatherman. Ooh, I don't think you'd want to see that. But let's talk about the offensive line here and start off with the hog mollies and what is so critical. Jim Harbaugh has basically described his offensive linemen as weapons. And he certainly has some weapons at this tackle room. One of the best, if not the best tackle room in the NFL, with Rashawn Slater at left tackle, all-pro. Joe Alt, he's on his way to becoming an all-pro. Two great bookends. It shows the value of having those guys, because if they wouldn't have had those tackles, I'm telling you, his offensive line would have been real bad this season. Anyway, Joe Alt, Rashawn Slater, excellent tackles. You can argue the Joe Alt rating should be a little higher. I wouldn't hate that by any stretch. It is a rookie, so I like to be conservative with some of these. He had his struggles too at moments, especially go back into the playoff game versus Will Anderson. Did have a couple of times where Will got the best of him. Overall, I mean, Joe Alt has been as advertised. He's been an unbelievable rookie, and he's also transitioned over to right tackle, so I got to give him a little bit of time there, too, to get even better with this full off season. So you got your tackle, your starters. You need a little bit of depth here. Foster Sorrell is a restricted free agent. He should be back on the cheap. But yeah, besides that, Tyler McClellan, you need some more depth in the room. I'll be looking at between free agency and the draft. Not a huge priority, but it is definitely something I need to find a nice solid swing tackle. Even Jamari Sawyer, I don't have listed here. He can play as a swing tackle for them as well. Onto the interior of the offensive line, where this is the spot that they need to add more weapons, right? This is the area that they need to add more weapons on their offensive line. The interior struggled throughout the portion of this entire season, in my opinion, and is an area that they have to prioritize this offseason. They must get better here in the run game and in pass protection. It was a problem protecting Justin Herbert. I saw so many times the miscommunication, missing blocks, just getting beat. It was all throughout the season, problems arising with this interior of the offensive line. So this is going to be something we will be looking at in both assets, free agency and the draft. Now, you got Zion Johnson, who is still under contract, hasn't quite really been able to develop into, I think, what they were hoping when they selected him, 19th overall, first-round selection. But he's a solid starter over there at left guard. It's the center and the right guard positions that have to be upgraded. Jamari Sawyer, a solid backup player, as I talked about earlier. He can play a little tackle as well for this team. Trey Pipkins has been a disappointment, and I think he ends up moving on. They may move on from him this offseason. Bradley Boozman is a free agent. They got to upgrade. I mean, once again, just the miscommunications there at times. I mean, he's a strong guy, but he can really just doesn't have that lateral quickness, I feel like, for some quick, interior players and stuff. And I feel like the push is solid with him one-on-one at times. Overall, though, like they need an upgrade there at the center position. You got Brandis Hymus, who's another guy here from Nebraska. They've kind of converted over to center, and he just, really hasn't played a whole ton. Maybe I don't know if they bring him back or not. I doubt it. He's a free agent as well. So they need to upgrade this center position. Absolutely number one priority. And then that right guard position as well is a pretty big need. I mean, Jamari Sawyer can play. If you have to stick with him next season, that's fine. But center is the number one priority. And then right guard, I would definitely be looking at that as well. On to the tight end room, though. And it starts with Will Dissly, which I know Chargers fans are probably like, this is misery. Give Kathy Bates a run for her money over there. And it was really rough in that playoff game. The drops, that one drop that led to an interception, it was just bad in general. Will Dissly's not a bad tight end, so I feel bad because it was at the end of the season and people are going to remember that. He had his moments throughout the season where it was ups and downs. He's not really a high-end number one tight end. He's a solid number two tight end. And I'm glad to keep him on the roster for next season, but they need a serious upgrade here. They need a reliable target. Greg Roman and his offense really revolves around having a really good tight end. So I think this is the top priority, even over a receiver for this team. They need to add a dynamic pass catcher in this offense to really make this go. So that is going to be, and be the number one priority for this team. I feel like, especially on offense, other than the interior of the offensive line, is trying to find a really dynamic pass catching tight end. And there are some options in this draft. It's one of the better draft classes for that. So that's the good news here. Now, besides that, you got Tucker Fisk, you got Stone Smart, and I actually kind of like Stone Smart. He's a guy you keep an eye out on. He's a restricted free agent or exclusive restricted free agent, one of the two. Both of those guys are, and I imagine both will be back as well. So I'm not worried about keeping a little bit of depth there. We need to find somebody though. Hayden Hurst hasn't worked out this season. You got McLennan Castles, Eric Tomlinson. So yeah, it's going to be an area we prioritize. Go on and transfer to the wide receiving room. This is also an area that they need to at least throw some draft picks into. I will be interested to see if they spend a little money here in free agency. Personally, I wouldn't. I think that Ladd McConkey is this team's number one going forward. I mean, everyone's talking about Brian Thomas, Malik Nabers, Martin Harrison Jr. Ladd McConkey had one of the best rookie seasons. I mean, the dude was really, really good. He's an excellent route runner. His yak ability, he is so tough. He fits the persona of this team to a T. So I really think that McConkey's their number one going forward. And Quinn Johnston, yes, everyone's going to talk about the drops with him. And in seriousness, it has been a problem throughout his career. He is still talented, and I still see a lot of potential for him to be a solid number 2 wide receiver. So I'm not ready to give up on Quentin Johnston. And you saw when he was really going off in that Raiders game, man. If we can see more of that Quentin Johnston, okay, I'll be ready to go. We need to still add into this room. Joshua Palmer is a free agent. He could come back on the cheap, especially with the injuries he had. Maybe he tries to do a little 1-year prove-it scenario and then get a contract next season. So I could see that being in the cards for Joshua Palmer. Once again, Palmer's a solid number 3 type of receiver. He had some drops this season too. Anyway, I think that this scenario will throw some picks at. But overall, I think tight end is the number one thing for this offense, and just the way this offense runs. That's going to be what I'm looking at first and foremost. And then we'll try to add some depth in the draft and maybe spend a couple of picks at the receiver position. Darius Davis, great special teamer, all pro special teamer. So you got him in there as good 4th, 5th option too, as another playmaker. Anyway, I'll be definitely looking at adding some players into the room. On to the running back room, J.K. Dobbins. And J.K. Dobbins has had a really good season. If it weren't for that injury, he would have gone over 1,000 yards this year. And he's somebody that I'm looking to bring back. He has just been it's been a remarkable comeback. He's had 6 knee procedures or whatever. It's incredible how much this guy's had to go throughout his entire career. So the resilience, most people would probably hang up and retire. Let's just be real. After that many knee procedures or just surgeries in general, he's a trooper. You cannot deny that. And I also think he wouldn't be super expensive to bring back, mainly because teams are going to look at that risk and reward and say, we're not willing to pay top end money. He's going to have to prove it this next season if he wants any sort of chance of getting a bigger contract. I'll say he's going to have to put it 2 seasons in a row. Anyway, I would definitely bring back J.K. Dobbins. They still need to draft some more help here. You got Kamani Vidal. If he can be more consistent with hitting lanes, and I just feel like it's not quite there yet with him. He's got some talent. I'm watching out for Kamani Vidal. I do like him coming out of Troy. Was he a 5th or 6th round selection? You got Hassan Haskins, who they picked up, great special teamer. Gus Edwards has been a little bit of a disappointment. They could move on, save a little bit of money there if they wanted to. Anyway, I'm going to be adding at least one guy in here, maybe another receiving element into the room would be nice, and maybe another power back if I do end up moving on from Gus Edwards, if they end up moving on from Gus Edwards. So those are kind of what I'm looking for in the room. Besides that, though, I would just definitely say bring back J.K. Dobbins. To the quarterback position, this is not a need, obviously. Justin Herbert honestly had one of his best seasons as a pro, in my opinion. Even though this receiving core and tight end room was very shaky on up and down the interior of the offensive line, didn't give him the time always, he was just excellent throughout this season. I know he was going to talk about that Houston Texans game. A lot of those interceptions, besides one that he overthrew, I felt like a lot of those weren't his fault. He had a really great season, and I think that you're going to continue to build upon that. He's a top 5 quarterback in my eyes this season at least, and going forward, he's a top 10 quarterback if nothing else. The only question I would have here going forward is, who's your backup? Taylor Heineke, I'd try to bring him back. Easton Stick, I also wouldn't mind bringing back as well. Now, both guys could be a little more expensive than I want to spend. I know that Jim Harbaugh is going to prioritize having a good backup because that's his philosophy, is having a really nice backup is important for their team. And I expect him to spend, $5 to $7 million once again in this backup quarterback position. So we'll see how that all works out. I wouldn't even be shocked, especially since they have got so many draft picks. They could try to draft somebody to develop into that third spot. So they may have to move on from one of these guys, keep one of them, and then you go from there. On to the defense side of the ball here. And let's start with the interior of the defensive line. And it really outperformed. Like, I was going into this season, I'm like, oh, biting my nails. This is going to be bad. You know what? Coaching Jesse Minter, you cannot take, he is such a good defense coordinator. He's going to be a guy next season we're all talking about as a coaching candidate. He has done a great job with this defense in general, but this interior defensive line has really outperformed and done a great job. Poona Ford's been able to stay healthy and been a really, really nice interior player for them. I expect a contract extension coming his way very, very soon. You got Tyir Tart, interior guy they got from Tennessee. He's been a nice, well, he's technically left them, but he's been somebody that's been a rock for them as a nose tackle. He's more of a rotational player. He's not a full-time starter or anything. He's just been a really, really nice rotational guy on that interior run defender. And certainly another guy that I would try to bring back. You got Otita Ogbonnia, who they've drafted a few seasons ago from UCLA, and he's worked in and been a solid rotation. He's a starter for them. I would like to at least try to add somebody into the room, and this is an area I could see being a first, second round type of need for this team. They still need to add more depth into the room, nothing else. You got Morgan Fox, who's a free agent. Scott Matlock is more of a fullback, to be honest with you. Anyway, like they need more rotation, just like Bugby hasn't really been able to step up just yet. They're Alabama. What was he, a mid-round pick for them? So I will be looking at adding somebody. I think this is an early need that they still need to be addressing, especially with the free agents that they have, depending on who they bring back and who they don't. I would try to ultimately, you got to prioritize Poona Ford. Try to bring back Tyir Tart. That would be ideal. If nothing else, like you're going to have to bring somebody in there too. So that's kind of what I'm looking at here, is trying to spend a mid, first, second, third round pick at latest on this, and then also maybe bring somebody in free agency, especially depending on who you lose. Let's go on to the edge position now, and Khalil Mack's had a great season. Oh my gosh, he's so disruptive. And not just as a pass rusher, as a run defender, he's so freaking strong out there. Teams can't deal with this guy still. Khalil Mack, excellent. You want to try to bring him back. I would 100% try to give him a re-sign and maybe a 2-year deal. Lock him out for the rest of his career if you can. I don't know, whatever is possible. Khalil Mack's been excellent. So he's somebody I would definitely want to be donning back in this powder blue and the lightning bolt Charger helmet. And then you got on the other side, Joey Bosa. An interesting discussion here. Of course, Joey Bosa been a Charger legend throughout his career. He's had a big slowdown this season. I really did not see much of Joey Bosa. I'll be real. I mean, he's dealing with some injuries too. But I do think it might be time with his, $36 million cap hit or whatever. They can save quite a bit of money by letting him go. It's something that they have to seriously consider, or at least say, hey, look, Joey, you're going to have to take a major pay cut to come back. And if he wants to take a pay cut, if they're willing to work that out, I'm cool bringing Joey Bosa back. But that is something we're going to have to discuss in kind of when it comes time to free agency period of this video. Now, you got Tuitu Pelotu, nice solid player there. Almost had a 10-sack season, was so close. Maybe you can get it next year, more of a full-time player for this team. You got Bud Dupree, also a nice, solid rotational player, solid pass rusher. That's really what they used him as kind of guy they would rotate in on series as a situational pass rusher. And he certainly can still do that. He's under contract. He's not super expensive either, only like $3 million. So I can keep him for a solid backup edge rusher. I'm cool with that. I wouldn't want him starting, but as a rotational pass rusher, I'm cool with that. They are going to need some more depth in here, especially if you let go Joey Bosa. This could even be a first-round need for them. I think with Tui Pelotu, if you bring back Khalil Mack, maybe bring somebody in free agency in the draft, then you're talking about a day 2 type of pick, and I think that would make a lot of sense. Get into the linebacking room now, where they've invested, and Deion Henley took a massive year 2 step. He was really good this season, actually, and he's working his way into a plus starter in the NFL. Denzel Perriman's a good player, and it was nice to see him back, donning the powder. But I feel like that with the injuries, it's going to be something they're going to have to really think about this offseason, whether to bring him back. Plus, you got Junior Colson, their 3rd-round pick from Michigan, that I would imagine that they see taking a big step into next season as well. So a lot of these guys are just decisions. And Nick Nyman, I expect him to be back. He's a great special teamer, has experience there. Troy Dye, another dude who's been a nice rotational player for them with injuries of Denzel Perriman. I think that you try to bring back both of those guys if you can between Perriman and Dye. Definitely try to bring them back. I wouldn't see that Perriman would be super expensive. And I also think he wants to come back as well. So I would just my advice here would be just try to re-sign the guys you have right now. I don't think this is a high draft need, especially with Deion Henley stepping up and playing so well this season, Junior Colson. in development. It just really needs more time. That's what it is. And he was also dealing with injuries, so I can't really judge on the limited sample size that he played on. There's just a lot more that I need to see with Junior Colson before I say this or that with him just at the moment. So I would just recommend bringing back your guys and going from there. This is not really a huge draft need or free agency type of thing other than just bringing your guys back. Just like the interior of the defensive line, this is another area where I was a little bit biting the fingernails going into the season. Oh man, they have been excellent at the cornerback position. Now, they did have a bit of drop off here and there. Like Christian Fulton he came out of the gates playing hot, man. He was one of the best corners in football early in the season. The end of the season, I felt like he cooled off. He got picked on a lot, especially at the end of the season. That's my opinion. I have watched all the Chargers games, and that was just, I don't know. Again, hit me back on that if you disagree, but I feel like number 7 was getting picked on a little bit more at the end of the season. Struggled. I know he was dealing with injuries too, midpoint. Anyway, like I would try to bring back Fulton. Maybe you can get him back once again. Not like super expensive. I think Asante Samuel Jr., I know he's talked about really wanting to be back. I don't know if he's going to be the ideal scheme fit. Him and Jesse Minter, like his tackling is concerning, especially for this defense. And I do think it's something they're going to really prioritize. Fulton is a much better tackler. So if I had to guess who they're going to prioritize, it would be more of Fulton. Maybe I'm wrong on that, especially with Asante Samuel saying, hey, look, I want to be back. I love LA. Then that would make sense to bring him back. But it's going to have to work out a deal because I think Asante Samuel could still get a pretty big contract somewhere. And PFF right now is projecting him to get like $14 million a season. So that's going to be a tough one to stomach, giving him $14 million a year, just coming off an injury and with some of those tackle concerns. Great cover man. Don't get me wrong. He's a great cover man. And another reason why I'm okay letting go of one of these guys is because you have Terheeb Still, who was a steal in the 5th round. Like, what? This guy literally took over games this year. I was like, who is this guy? Because I don't even know if I freaking scouted him last year. And I went back and like, holy mackerel, this guy, how the heck am I missing this dude? But Terheeb Still was unbelievable. Hopefully he can have another great season like next year and build upon that because he should be a starter. I'll just be real. He should be a starter. Cam Hart was good too. I mean, Hart, I feel like I did see more rookie struggles with him. Still was just unbelievable. But Hart, I still think he's got a promising future, at least as a number 3 corner for this team as a backup. You know what I mean? So my only advice here would be finding a good, solid rotational slot corner. Jazir Taylor injured. Now, Derwin James ended up playing a lot of that role, and you can keep him doing that role going forward because you can play Alohi Gilman and Elijah Molden up top and then have Derwin James play in the slot. So they're in a pretty good spot. I would just say try to bring in a free agent or some draft depth in that slot position. Finishing up the roster with the safety position now, and they're in a really good spot. As long as you bring back Elijah Molden, maybe bring back Tony Jefferson too, I think that's a priority. They're in a really good position. Alohi Gilman, Derwin James, Elijah Molden, Tony Jefferson, all exceptional players for this team. And I think Elijah Molden was another big surprise, moving him to safety and the way he played early in the season before injury. He was really, really good. Alohi Gilman was dealing with his own injuries too. Tony Jefferson, I hadn't seen his name in such a long time. And I'm like, oh, he's playing for the Chargers now. And the dude is making tons of plays. Oh my gosh, Tony Jefferson. Got to give him a shout out to him. Kind of a career resurgence here, but definitely earns a spot and respect on this roster as somebody that I would try to bring back 100%. Keep him around, at least as a rotational player. I'm not saying he's a full-time starter, but as a rotational guy, I feel great about that. Obviously, Derwin James, all-pro type player, great season once again. What he brings to the table is just, it's hard to find guys like that. He can play up in the box. He can play in the slot. He can play up top. Like, he can just do everything. He's a matchup piece, linebacker, you name it. He can blitz like crazy. He's just one of the best chess pieces in the NFL there with Kyle Hamilton and whatnot and company. So, rare company to be in. So their safety room, not a huge need. Just bring back the guys you have. That's really my recommendation. Let's transition to the free agency strategy now, where it is always tricky making team cuts. I hate having to do it, but sometimes you have to. Joey Bosa, as I talked about earlier, I just cannot see him playing on that cap number next season. If he's willing to take a huge pay cut, then I'm 100% fine with that. And I do think that's a real possibility on what could happen. For right now, though, I'm just going to go ahead and cut him, save that money, $25.36 million. That's a lot, and that we can work with to re-sign Khalil Mack and some other players on this roster. It's going to be really, really beneficial for them. Trey Pipkins, also going to let him go, save just under $7 million. Gus Edwards, save a little over $3 million. I think we can find some nice upgrades and areas to go in the draft, free agency, etc. And then on to the team re-signs here, and I had to make a tough decision. I kind of was like, I chose between Heineke and Stick. I love Easton Stick, and I know he's a big locker room guy there, so that is tricky. But ultimately, I chose one of these guys, Taylor Heineke, and I think we could draft a really nice developmental backup here later on. So that's kind of my approach going into this in the draft. Easton Stick, I could still see him coming back, though. I'm be honest. Taylor Heineke, 1 year, $5 million. And then you got J.K. Dobbins coming back, 2 years, $7 million, 3.5 average. He is going to be, I don't think he's going to be super expensive, so I want to make sure we bring him back, at least as a solid running back for this team that knows the system. We'll be looking at drafting some more help here too, but it makes us so we don't have to force it into the draft early, right? So now we can say, all right, this draft has a lot of depth in it. Maybe we can spend an early day 3 pick on it. So it just gives you some flexibility depending on who's on the board and best available. And then we got Joshua Palmer, decided to bring back 1 year, $4 million. And that's really what it is. It's a prove it year. It's like DeMarcus Robinson level contract. It's in that range where he can be a solid backup at that price point. Maybe we try to upgrade between free agency and the draft. It doesn't lock him into a starter position, but it gives us some depth and some competition going into training camp, etc., and into the, in the regular season. And then besides that, J.K. Scott, I decided to bring back. You need to probably bring in some competition at punter as well, I'll be real. But I decided to bring him back $1.5 million on a 1-year deal. Practice squad, I did account for $4 million. So there's a couple of restricted guys like Stone Smart, Tucker Fisk, etc., that you can account for that money. I also throw a little bit of leeway just in case some of these contracts are off. I like to budget some of that in there. And then defensively, we got Khalil Mack coming back, the sack attack here for the Chargers. 2 years, $44 million, just around $22 million. Well, it is $22 million average. So getting him back is going to be really, really nice. He's been so good for this team. You got Puna Ford, Tyre Tart, bringing both of those guys back on 2-year deals. That way we got some guys under contract. 2 years, $20 million for Puna, and then 2 years, $8 million for Tyre Tart. Puna Ford would be in that Justin Jones range, which I think is very fair, and Tyre Tart would be in like the Andrew Billings sort of range money financially wise, which for both of those guys, I think that is kind of where their value is. And again, I could be wrong on these. These are just estimates, right? It's tough sometimes making these estimates. You got Denzel Perriman coming back, 1 year, $2.4 million. Hey, I'm cool if he's just coming back as a rotational player. If Junior Colson wins the job, that would be great. And then Denzel Perriman would be a great rotational player for that price. I'm cool with it. Troy Dye, also want to bring him back 1 year, $2 million. Great rotational player as well. Nick Nyman, great special teamer. I want to keep him around for sure. Maybe we could give him a couple-year extension as well, because that's definitely a possibility. Christian Fulton, I'm going to give him a 2-year, $15 million deal, 7.5 average. I'm expecting, when he gets fully healthy again, maybe we can start seeing that early season, what he was able to show off there, as good as he was. I think we still got a lot of that with Fulton. Plus, he looked really good for Jesse Minter. Besides the end of the season, right? It's a little bit of a sour in the mouth, but I do think that Fulton has been his best really throughout his career in this defense. I did let go of Asante Samuel. Like I talked about earlier, I decided who's going to be the cheaper option. Plus, I think Fulton might be a better scheme fit for them. So that's what I decided to go after. We shall see, okay? I like Asante Samuel a lot, too. He's a really good football player. If it weren't for that injury, that's another tough thing, too. And then we brought back Elijah Molden and Tony Jefferson. Elijah Molden, 2-year deal, $12 million, 6-year average for him. Going to be some more help, and that way Derwin James can play all over the place. Give you those two back-end guys with Alohi Gilman and Elijah Molden, and obviously Derwin James playing everywhere. Tony Jefferson, some more depth, especially with the way he played there for them at the end of the season. Was just unbelievable. Go on to some signings, though. Outside-wise, we're going to sign Ryan Kelly from Indiana. I'm a Hoosier, and this guy has been so good for the Indianapolis Colts. He's been a little banged up through his career, so that's the one thing you have to look at here. I'm giving him a 2-year, $24 million, 12-year average. I think that's very fair for as good of a center as he is. It's just the injury questions. If it weren't for the injury questions, he'd probably be making like $15+ million in free agency. He's that good. Anyway, that is the big question mark for him. And you could say, well, is this a little Corey Linsley-esque for them? And I understand that. There's always a risk when going outside in free agency. But I do think Ryan Kelly is a really good center and somebody that can come in here, call out the protections better, and also just be a really, really good player all around for this team. Brandon Sheriff, I'm not done on the interior. I told you we got to work. We got to add some weapons to this interior. Now, I'm going for the veteran route. I think it makes a lot of sense right now with where they're at and some other areas that they have to fill in the draft. But Brandon Sheriff going to come in, be a reliable right guard. He's still been a reliable right guard for the Jaguars. While he doesn't have the run blocking power, I would say, anymore that he once did, he's still a solid player in that department, and he's a great pass protector. So he'll be a reliable guy for Justin Herbert, keeping him clean, which is another priority for me. And then we got DJ Humphries, going to bring him in for a swing tackle, $1 million or $2 million 1-year deal, just adding a little bit of depth in that tackle room. And then on the defense side of the ball, only one signing here, Isaiah Oliver, 1 year, $3 million. Going to be a good slot corner / rotational dime backer for them, and just give you rotation along that cornerback position. Isaiah Oliver can play a little on the outside as well. And then I do account in $14 million range for their draft picks. That might be a little high, I'll be honest. I don't know. It's really an estimate. It could be like somewhere from like 10 million to 15, because they do have quite a few. What, they got 11 draft picks this season, so that's something to 11, 12 draft picks, something like that. So we'll take a look here in a minute. Anyway, that's kind of what I'm budgeting in there. Let's look at the roster once more before we get into the draft and highlight those needs. And starting with the wide receiver and tight end room, I'm going to be adding a tight end. That is the number one need. I think we all know where we're going here, you know what I'm saying? But I don't need to foreshadow it too much, but that is a top priority here. No question about it. Wide receiver, I may try to do more of a strength in numbers here. We've got our starters returning back. I think that they need to add some more play. I mean, you got Brendan Rice. We'll see when he gets fully healthy. Maybe he can develop into a nice fourth option for this team as well. You know, he's got the talent to do so, and the bloodlines, of course. So keep an eye on Brendan Rice, another guy that I didn't mention earlier, but he's another one. I'm going to be adding a couple of receivers and playmakers in general. Same thing at running back. I'm going to add a couple of guys, strength in numbers here. Strength and Honor, as you know, Gladiator. I've been watching Gladiator 2 lately. That's an interesting movie so far. But J.K. Dobbins returns for us. Kamani Vidal right now is that backup role. I'll be adding another power back and a receiving back more than likely. I may double dip in this running back class. Quarterback, backup quarterback, I'll try to find somebody there late in the draft. Not an early need, but I think that they can find a long-term backup for this team. And then on the offensive line, I'm going to try to maybe find like a developmental right guard or developmental interior center as well. I think those two areas I'm going to be looking at, trying to upgrade that interior for the long haul, at least add some more depth, because the depth is a little thin. You got Jamari Sawyer, who can play a little tackle, play a little inside. We brought in DJ Humphries, and then there's some unproven talent there. You got Foster Sorrell as well, but I definitely will be adding a couple of draft picks on that interior. At least starting wise, I feel really good about our starting offensive line. It looks good, actually. And then onto the defense side of the ball, look, there are a couple areas this team needs to focus on. I think it's the trenches mainly, okay? The defensive interior and the edge room. Those are the two top priorities. I think those are round 1 through round 3 needs. Besides that, cornerback, linebacker, safety, they're all like late round throws, if anything, but we'll see what we have and where we're at. Overall, I would say this is in a pretty good spot. I don't have to force picks there. The defensive line is the top priority here on the defense side of the ball. It's draft time, and with the first pick, are you shocked? I mean, come on, really? You know, Colston Loveland, lock him in here. I know, Michigan Wolverine player. You're going to see, oh no, here we go. But Colston Loveland's exactly what they need. He is somebody that's going to come in here, be an immediate impact for them as a receiving threat. He's improved his blocking a little bit this season. I still think that's something he's going to have to get better at, get stronger, and that's okay. Look, I want to use him early on as a weapon, as a receiving element. He's going to be so big in that department. He can play on the outside even, play in the slot and be a matchup piece, and he's a really good route runner. He's got a lot of flexibility, ankle flexibility, and lateral agility and twitch for a guy his size. He's going to be a really, really nice target for Justin Herbert, and a reliable target, hopefully, too, for them. Especially, too, as much as Greg Roman wants to run some of that offense through the tight end position, you got to have a reliable tight end in there. On to round number 2. I'm going Omar Norman Lott, the interior defense lineman from Texas. This guy's got some athleticism, man, and he is explosive. He's got that first step quickness. He is a really good finesse rusher. Now, he needs to get better at the point of attack. His strength profile is not quite there, but you got Poona Ford. We brought back Taylor Tart as well. You got Otito Ogbonnia, who's a nice, solid rotational player as well. So he doesn't have to start right away. However, with that being said, I think he'll be a we did lose Morgan Fox in free agency, so I think that Omar Norman Lott can fill right into there, be that nice sub-package rusher early on in his career as he develops into a full-time starter. And hey, I think by the end of the season, he could end up being a full-time starter for this team. Anyway, got to add some upgrades on that interior. I think Norman Lott has all the potential to be a really, really good interior player. Now, here's a guy that I hadn't really heard of a whole ton, but I've been recently watching edge rushers. Q Robinson, Quadarius Robinson from Alabama. He is so athletically gifted. Now he's very, very thin, and that's going to be an area that teams are going to, things are going to have to discuss with him. And that's the reason why he fell to the third round. Plus limited sample size. He's had some injuries. He did get another season-ending injury this season, but man, is he explosive. Oh my gosh. He is so crazy athletic. He's got bend to a guy for 6'5". He's got some twitch to him and some decent bend for that. He is a very good athlete. So explosive, so difficult for tackles to have to deal with. And also he's got really long arms as well, like plenty enough length to get the job done. He certainly has the upside to be a top edge rusher in the NFL. He is just very, very raw. He's almost like a Danielle Hunter type of player coming out of college. So if you can develop him, he certainly could be a diamond in the rough. And I've heard a lot of good things too about him on and off the field. I mean, the stuff he has had to deal with, his father recently passing away, the injuries he's had to deal with and fighting back from those. He is a warrior, and I like warriors, man. I like the motivation, the drive, and he's somebody like I talk about that has all the tools to be a top-tier edge rusher. There's nothing this guy cannot really do. There really isn't. So I'm so excited to see Q Robinson, where he ends up going with a good defensive coach in mind like Jesse Mentor. I think he could be a really good fit. To round number 4 and day number 3, we're starting off with Pat Bryant going to get a big target for Justin Herbert on the outside. He's going to be that vertical stretcher. He's going to be somebody on the perimeter that can be that go ball winner. And just adding some more competition with of course, with Quentin Johnson. Hopefully steps up in that number 2 role, but I think that he would be a really nice addition with that. Joshua Palmer, etc., competing there. Brendan Rice on the outside and give you another weapon there for Justin Herbert. And I like what he's done at Illinois. He's been a really sure-hand guy. On to our next pick, Damian Martinez. I don't know what it is, but I feel like he's got a great baseball name. He's got a good football name too. But I don't know, maybe I'm bugging or something today, but Damian Martinez, really good running back, man. He's a powerful guy. He's going to be that north cut or north-south cut, one cut runner and just give you another power element. After losing Gus Edwards in there in free agency, we let him go. So I think Martinez can fill that role behind J.K. Dobbins. To our first 6th-round pick, Miles Frazier. I love anybody with the name Frazier, Joe Frazier, Smoking Joe. Hopefully he can be a Smoking Joe on that interior of the offense line. Has versatility on the offense line, but mainly played right guard and can be a nice developmental piece behind Brandon Sheriff. You got Jamari Sawyer, as I talked about earlier, but I think that he's also going to be a guy going into a contract year, can play multitude assets. Frazier, with his strong hands that he has, he's got some of the better hands in this class. He doesn't have the foot speed some of the other guys have, but I do think he can get away with it. He's more going to be a gap power, hungrier guy. He can move dudes off the line. And I think he'll be a nice fit here for Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman's offense. Now, Hoosier, baby, let's go. We got Curtis Rourke going off the board here. I love Curtis Rourke. I think he would go higher if it weren't for the injuries. Also, he's going to be like 25 in his first year, so that's something to consider as well. He's an older prospect, immense injury history. He was playing through a torn ACL or whatever it was this season. Like, what? Unbelievable. Curtis Rourke is a trooper. He'll be a great backup. I think he's going to be a very high-end backup for whoever gets him. I don't know if he's going to be a plus starter or anything like that, but I do think he is a really, really nice backup to have. Somebody that you can get late in the draft because of some of those injury red flags and the age and stuff like that. And for this team, that's really what I'm looking for. A nice, high-quality backup here at the end of the draft. This next one, I'm going Drew Kendall from Boston College. He's a really, really nice center prospect. I've not watched tons of him. I did watch him in the preseason, did an evaluation of him. I haven't watched tons of him this year just yet, and I've heard his film is great. I believe it was all ACC this year, so keep an eye on Drew Kendall. He's also at the East-West Shrine Bowl. He could go a little higher than this. I'm not exactly sure with his center class right now. It is very tricky. There's not a whole ton of centers that I think are going to go high, so we just shall see. But Drew Kendall, a dude that I think can play in many forms of schemes. Like, he's a guy that's not limited to a zone or a gap power team. He can play a little both. He's a solid athlete. He's not an elite athlete. He's powerful. He's not like overwhelmingly powerful, but he's a solid player and somebody that I think could be a great backup for this team that you can have develop behind Ryan Kelly for a couple of years, and then you see what you have. Maybe you have to invest in this again, but Kendall has a lot of traits you look for to be a starting center in the NFL. He has the bloodlines too with his dad. So keep an eye on Drew Kendall and what he can do and be a nice backup for this team. Final 6th-round pick, I'm going with Samuel Brown. Sam Brown is a guy that transferred over from Houston to Miami, and while he didn't have the production this season, I think some of it was just limited with him getting up to speed with this system. The talent with this guy is there. I mean, Dane Brugler was hyping this guy up as a top 100 player at the beginning of the season, and for good reason. He's got good athleticism and solid size as well. He looks like a dude that can hang in the NFL. I mean, he's got the burst, he's got the athleticism. So why not take a chance on a guy here? I didn't expect him to declare, actually. I thought he was going to come back for another season. Overall, though, I'd take another chance at receiver. I think we got to add as many playmakers in as we possibly can. So we added Pat Bryant and Samuel Brown. Going to give you as much possible hits to potentially get a stud there. With our first 7th round pick, I'm going with the Donovan Edwards, the Wolverine. Yeah, okay. I know I try not to go too many Michigan players. I don't want to do too much selling out here, even though it's interesting. But the Don, if there's anybody that's going to be able to fit in with Jim Harbaugh and understand and be able to work and get those strengths out of him, having a down year without Jim Harbaugh, maybe he's saying, look, let's go back to Jim Harbaugh and go get yourself somebody that can be a dynamic playmaker with the ball in his hands and just be a good receiving back for this team and an explosive threat. And also, he can help you on special, even though they got Darius Davis. So, in general, just add some more rotation in this running back room and as a receiving element for Justin Herbert. Pick of the draft, I'm going Joe Evans, the defensive tackle at UTSA. Going to see him at the East West Shrine Bowl. Here's a guy that I haven't really scouted, but he's a big guy. He's somebody that can be strong at the point of attack, be a really good run defender, and just need to really see more of him to be able to give a full evaluation on him. So I'll be keeping an eye out on him at the East West Shrine Bowl and how he does there. He could be a riser after that. So yeah, just going to give you some more depth on that interior at that nose position behind Tyler Tart. That's really what I'm looking at. Chris Hinton as well. Anyway, I think that he gives you a little bit more of that defense line interior depth. So let's go ahead and recap everything up here. After the draft and free agency, everything we've been able to do coaching-wise, GM-wise, they're in a really good spot. Joe Ortiz, Jim Harbaugh, Jesse Minter, Greg Roman. The only thing I would question is Greg Roman. We'll see after the season how things work, but I thought he did a great job in his first season here for the Chargers, and we continue to add. You get a playmaker in here, Colston Loveland. You added a couple of wide receivers, Sam Brown, Pat Bryant. Running back-wise, they should be in a much better situation. You got depth, too, for injuries. J.K. Dobbins as your lead rusher, Damian Martinez is your power back, Kamani Vidal coming along, Donovan Edwards is your receiving element for them, Hoskin Haskins, good special teamer, you got Jared Patterson too. So they've got a really, really solid rotation and a group of young guys in the room. And then at quarterback, just get a backup with Curtis Rourke. Offensive line, that was a huge priority, right? Add weapons for Jim Harbaugh. We did that, I feel like. Now, draft-wise, maybe you'd like to say going at it a little bit earlier. I could understand that, too. I just kind of prioritized other areas in this draft. I would say next year would be the focus going early in that element. But we got Brandon Sheriff, Ryan Kelly in free agency. Of course, there's a little bit of injury concern with Ryan Kelly, you could say, and that would be the one knock of picking him up. But I think he'd be an excellent addition for this team and help get the call-outs right, pass protection set, be a better run blocker, be an immediate upgrade for them. And then you got Drew Kendall as a solid developmental center too, and Miles Frazier as a developmental right guard for them. And Sawyer would end up being more of a swing tackle. You had DJ Humphreys too, Foster Sorrell. That'd be your depth there at the tackle position. Overall, I feel like their offensive line would be really good as long as they can stay somewhat healthy, of course. But that's like any team. You got to stay healthy up front. And we got some depth too. Anyway, that's what we did on offense. Let me know your thoughts. I mean, I was really trying to focus in on this offense and making it better, right? You got to be able to compete. You have to make some sacrifices on defense, so that would be the one knock on my draft, I would say, for sure, that I would be looking back and saying, well, did we do enough on the defense side of the ball? We could have drafted a corner or a safety possibly somewhere in this draft, but we didn't. So that maybe you take one of those receivers out and you draft a DB instead. However, I mean, we still got some talented players. You got Omar Norman Lott, who's going to be a great rotational player early on. I think long-term wise, you're in a really good spot with him and his athletic profile, being a really good pass rusher with Poona Ford and Tyler Tart and Otito Ogbonia. So good rotation there that they're going to have to be going into this next season. We got Joe Evans too late in the draft as a backup nose / he can play a 3-tech as well for them. And then we got Q Robinson off the edge. And I'm telling you, Q Robinson has so much upside. If you, like I said, can develop him, watch out. Q Robinson could be one of the biggest sleepers in this draft. After watching him, I'm like, oh my gosh. Woo, man, he's got some traits. And you got Bud Dupree there still around. Tui Tupulotu would step into more of a starting role with Khalil Mack. And then we don't do anything at the corner, linebacker, or safety position. As I talked about earlier, maybe you try to add somebody in there, but I think they're in a really good spot. Tarheeb Steele stepping in as the starter. Christian Fulton's back. You got Jazir Taylor. Of course, Derwin James will also be playing in the slot a lot. We brought in Isaiah Oliver for some depth there, just in case we want to have Derwin James playing in the back. We brought back our safeties, though. You got Cam Hart as that third rotational outside corner. It is. That's our draft. That's our offseason approach for the LA Chargers. Let me know what you think, LA fans. I hope you have a really good day. And man, I'm so jealous. That's such a good offseason for the Chargers. just going out, the coaching staff, the GM changes. It's so hard to do what the Chargers really did. There's still a lot of work to go, but I'm so happy to see what this Chargers team can do going forward. Jim Harbaugh, I love Jim Harbaugh, man. Such a good coach, and Joe Ortiz, that combination. Let's get the RV out today. I'm in the car today. I don't have quite of the RV, but we're going for it. Anyway, I hope you guys have a good day. I'll talk to you here soon.